Researchers got GitHub's AI agent to take the contents of a private repository and post them in a public comment. There were no stolen credentials, there were no malicious code exploits. Nobody broke into anything. There was just a public issue written in plain English and one ordinary word. Hi, my name is Prince Onyamuna, and this is the Wicked Roundup with Everything DevOps. In this video, we are covering that flaw. Then we're going to touch on a couple of other things. First, there was a contributor who got into a fight with his open source project, and then he walked away and he still had admin access. Then we have another one where Kubernetes was drawing the hard line on AI contributions. And finally, we have a Google setting that's quietly changed on you in June. So stay tuned. So first, what are we even talking about here? Back in February, GitHub shipped something called GitHub Agentic Workflows. It's an AI agent that runs on Copilot or Anthropic's Claude, and it's wired into GitHub Actions. You write your workflow in plain Markdown, and the agent reads issues, pulls in tools, and responds on its own. It's very, very convenient. It's genuinely useful, actually. Now, researchers at Noma Security went and tested it and found something they are calling GitLost. Here's how the attack works. Step 1. You open an issue on a public repository. That's it. You don't need an account with any special permissions because on a public repo, anyone can open an issue. Step 2. Inside the body of that issue, you write an instruction in plain English. In the researcher's test, the issue was dressed up to look like a request from a vice president of sales following up after a customer meeting. Very completely ordinary looking. Step 3. GitHub Automation assigns that issue to an agent. Step 4. The agent reads the text, treats it as a legitimate instruction from a user, and goes and does it. It pulled the content of README files from public repositories and from a private one in the same organization, and then it posted it as a comment. Anyone could read it. But the funny part is, GitHub had guardrails in place. The agent was supposed to refuse this kind of thing. So the researchers tried multiple variations of the instruction to see what would get through, and there was just one word that did. Adding the word additionally was enough to make the model bypass those guardrails and run the instruction. So the distinction I think that's the most important thing here is older prompt injection attacks were mostly about manipulating what an agent says, like jailbreaking a chatbot to make it produce something it shouldn't. GitLost is about manipulating what an agent does with the permission it legitimately has. There's a phrase for this combination. It's called lethal trifecta. You have access to sensitive data, exposure to untrusted content, and an available path to send that data out. And look at what the agent had. It had read access across repositories, including private ones, for cross-repo context. It was reading text from a public repo that anyone can write into. And it had a publishing mechanism built right in it, which is the comment. All three in just one product. So my tip for you is this. Look at any agent that's running in your organization and ask 3 questions. What can it read? Where does its input come from? And can it write anything back out to somewhere public? If the answer to all 3 is yes, then you have a problem. And one more thing, the recommendation from the security people commenting on this is to treat all user-generated content as hostile instruction and not as trusted input. That includes comments, issues, tickets, form submissions. If your agent reads it, assume someone can write to it. I should also say that the reporting on this doesn't confirm a patch. There is no CVE attached to it and nothing has been published on that. So I'm not going to tell you that all of this has been fixed because I don't know that right now. The second story we're going to look at is about access that you forgot to take away. OpenMandriva is a Linux distribution, and in the early hours of the 8th of July, they say a former contributor used administrative privileges he still had and deleted parts of their GitHub repositories. The person they've named is Davide Betrisi, a developer known for his work on the Mumble project. 2 things happened. First, he deleted the GNOME and Cosmic repositories, and then he pushed an empty package into their Coca repository. Now, an empty package sounds entirely harmless, but this one was marked as obsoleting all the GNOME and Cosmic packages. So any package manager processing it would go and remove those desktop environments from the system. In OpenMandriva's own words, it quotes, could have damaged the systems of people using it. But now, there's a saving grace, and the saving grace is that Kuka is their rolling development branch. It's not the stable release. So this hits bleeding edge users rather than everybody running the distro. But how did we get here? Let me give you the short version. Beatrice had contributed for around 3 years, and at one point he offered to migrate their repository infrastructure onto a one dev instance he ran privately, which was going to mirror several dozen repositories in the process. So maintainers were uneasy about it, but in their own words, they quote, "He was such a well-known figure that we didn't expect anything bad." Then 2 other contributors joined. One of them was accused of repeatedly abusive behavior towards users and project members, and a lot of it in private messages, and several contributors left over it before the maintainers finally kicked that person out of the matrix chat. And that, in Open Madrivia's words, triggered a cascade of events. Beatrice and other contributors resigned. The project started cutting the mirror connections to his private infrastructure, and then came the early hours of the 8th of July. Beatrice denies this was sabotage, and I want to be fair and I'll give you his side. He said, "This was by no means a sabotage. The objective was not to harm the distribution I cared for and contributed to for the past 3 years." He said it was a protest because maintainers removed his one dev configuration files from repositories without consulting him. Open Mandriva then ran a full system audit and said that aside from the removed packages, they found no other violation. They said the actions constituted a criminal offense, but they've decided not to pursue legal action. Now, whatever you think about who is right here, look at the mechanism. Somebody in a dispute with the project still held the keys after the relationship broke down. That's what I want you to take from this. So my advice for you is, go and audit who has admin access on your GitHub organization. Check your repositories, check your cloud accounts, your CI. Don't audit the people you remember. Audit the ones that you've forgotten. Offboarding is one of the most boring security tasks that exist, which is exactly why it doesn't get done. The next story, and this one is about accountability. Kubernetes has formalized how AI fits into its contributions, and the rules are pretty direct. You can use AI to help you write your pull request, but as the author, you are responsible for understanding every single change. I told you last week. If you use AI, you must disclose it in the PR description. They even give a sentence. It's like, "This PR was written in part with the assistance of generative AI." You cannot list an AI as a co-author. You cannot sign commits with it. No assisted by or co-developed trailers. Nothing. Large AI-generated PRs are not allowed. A generated commit message are not allowed. You do not get to leave the first review to the reviewers. Verify it yourself before you submit. And then they gave 2 rules. 1. If a reviewer asks why a change was made and you cannot explain, that PR automatically gets closed. Second rule is, when you respond to review comments, you have to do it without AI. Reviewers want to engage with you. They don't want generated responses. If you don't engage directly, the PR also gets closed. There's also a clever enforcement detail. The CNCF has a tool that verifies contributor license agreements. AI agents can't sign those. So Kubernetes turned on the CLA check for co-authors, which means if an AI is listed as a co-author, it immediately flags to the reviewer that the PR isn't ready. And the final story I have for you today. Back in June, Google made a change to its search privacy settings and announced it in a customer email. So most people are going to definitely miss it entirely. But this is what it means. Any media you upload or capture across Google's search services can now be saved and used to train its AI models. And by media, Google's own words is images, files, and audio and video recordings. It's not just search. It covers maps, shopping, flights, hotels, translate, and news. So practically, if you use Google Lens to snap a picture of something and search it, that image can be saved. If you use voice search, those recordings can be saved. If you're using Google Translate to practice speaking, that audio is also saved too. The important part you should note is that it's opt-out, so it's not by default. But there's a trap, something I see that I think that is very fishy, but I want you to catch. Before this change, you could control your search data through the web and app activity settings. But now they split it into 2. There's a web and app activity that's normally been there, and now there's a separate search data settings. Which means if you previously went to turn off the web and app activity at some point, you will most likely be thinking that you've opted out. But that no longer covers Google search services. It's now a separate setting and it is on. To fix this, go to your search service history settings. There's a checkbox called Save Media. You can uncheck that on its own, or uncheck set service history as well. You can also set your save data to auto delete after 3 months, 18 months, or 36 months. I'll put the link in the description. It takes about a minute. So let's put this week together. We had an AI agent with permissions somebody didn't fully map out. We had an admin account nobody remembered to revoke. We had a contributor process that had no rule until it needed one. The privacy setting that silently changed underneath you. Every one of them is actually the same story if you look at it. Something you were trusting by default stopped deserving your trust. That's just it. And nobody sent you a notification on when it changed. Now, there's a good news of all of this. And the good news is that there's a longer version of this newsletter. And you can find the links in the comments. That version has opportunities and events that are happening all around the world. So you do not want to miss it. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. And please click here to watch all our existing videos. Bye.